A Connecticut hillside in late autumn. The maples are the color of fire. A long, private drive winds up through the trees broken by potholes, the size of bathtubs choked with 20 years of fallen branches. At the top of the drive, a Victorian mansion rises out of the overgrowth like a shipwreck. 3 stories. A collapsing slate roof. Windows boarded or shattered. The east wing is being swallowed whole by ivy. A pickup truck climbs the rutted drive, old, rattling. The branches scrape its windshield like fingers. It stops in a circle of gravel. A man steps out. 35. Flannel shirt. Boots that have walked through 100 condemned buildings. In his hand, a cream-colored envelope, sealed with red wax. His name on the front in a dead man's handwriting. He breaks the seal. He reads 12 words. His face changes. He looks up at the house. The conference room sat 32 floors above Madison Avenue. Glass walls. Black marble table. A view of Manhattan that probably cost more per square foot than most people see in a lifetime. Theo Hartwell sat at the far end of that table in a flannel shirt. His hands were scarred from 20 years of restoration work. Old nicks across his knuckles. A pale crescent on his left thumb from a chisel that slipped in 2018. He wasn't supposed to be here. That's what their faces said. Vivian Hartwell sat across from him in a cream-colored Chanel suit. Her hair was pulled back so tight, it looked painful. She was 32 years old and already practicing the bored expression of a woman who owned too many penthouses. Reginald Hartwell sat 2 seats down. 58. Silver hair. A Rolex that he kept checking like the world owed him an apology for making him wait. And then there was Theo. 35. Tired, wearing boots that had walked through 100 condemned buildings. Gregory Finch entered the room without smiling. He never smiled. 40 years as an estate lawyer will do that to a man. "Shall we begin?" he said. Not a question. Theo nodded once. He hadn't slept. The night before, he'd sat in his Brooklyn studio staring at a half-finished sketch of a federal-style townhouse he'd been hired to restore in Cobble Hill. The job had fallen through. The client had run out of money. Theo had 3 months of rent left in his account, and a truck that needed a new transmission. So this little family circus. He'd come because the letter from Finch's office had been very clear. Mandatory attendance. Failure to appear forfeits any consideration in the final disposition of the estate. Theo had laughed when he read it. Consideration. That was a kind word for what Cornelius Hartwell was going to give him. Which was nothing. Probably less than nothing. Cornelius had been 91 years old when his heart finally gave out in his sleep. A peaceful death for a man who had spent his life making everything around him chaotic. He'd been a corporate raider in the 80s. The kind who bought failing companies, fired everyone, and sold the parts for scrap. He'd collected commercial real estate the way some men collect stamps. And he'd collected enemies the same way. Theo had been one of those enemies. 5 years ago, in the lobby of the Hartwell Group's headquarters, Theo had told his great-uncle exactly where he could put his nepotism-laced executive job offer. The whole lobby had heard it. Cornelius had laughed. A loud, sharp, ugly laugh. "You'll come crawling back," Cornelius had said. "Idealists always do." Theo hadn't crawled back. He'd built his small restoration business from a single rented garage in Red Hook. He'd worked weekends. He'd lived on instant noodles for 2 years. He'd never spoken to Cornelius again. Until now. Finch began to read. The first 30 minutes were ceremonial. The standard preamble. The legal language about sound mind and free will. Theo let his eyes drift to the window. The sky over the Hudson was the color of dirty steel. Then Finch got to the assets. To my niece Vivian Hartwell, Finch read, I leave the penthouse at 1407 Greenwich Street, the offshore holdings registered under Hartwell Cayman Trust, and the Aspen property. Vivian let out a small breath. Not surprise. Confirmation. She'd expected this. She'd planned for it. She probably had a decorator on speed dial. To my nephew, Reginald Hartwell, Finch continued, I leave the Hartwell Commercial Group in its entirety, the Southampton estate and the controlling interest in Hartwell Maritime Holdings. Reginald exhaled through his nose. He gave a small, satisfied nod. The nod of a man who had finally been recognized for decades of bowing and scraping. Theo waited. He didn't move. He didn't fidget. He just waited for the joke. Because there had to be a joke. Finch turned the page. He paused. He adjusted his glasses. Then he looked at Theo over the rims, and for half a second Theo thought he saw something like sympathy. Or maybe pity. It was hard to tell with Finch. To my great-nephew, Theo Hartwell, Finch began. Vivian let out a tiny laugh. Just a breath of one. Who always valued historical character over actual capital. Finch read his voice perfectly flat, and who so arrogantly believed he could build a life without my money. I leave you the entirety of the Blackthorne property in Litchfield County, Connecticut. May it provide you the shelter you so desperately deserve. The room went very still. Then Vivian laughed for real. It came out of her like a bark, sharp, loud. She covered her mouth with one manicured hand, but her shoulders kept shaking. Reginald looked over at her. He didn't laugh, but the corner of his mouth pulled up. A slow, mean little smile. Theo didn't move. He knew about Blackthorne. Everyone in the family knew about Blackthorne. Cornelius had bought the place 20 years ago at a tax auction. A massive Victorian on 40 acres in the middle of nowhere. He'd planned to bulldoze it and build a subdivision. The town had blocked him with a historic preservation order. So, out of pure vintage Cornelius spite, he'd let the building rot. 20 years of rot. 20 years of nobody touching it. Finch slid a second document across the table. Mr. Hartwell, he said, there are some additional matters. Theo picked up the document. His hand was steady. He'd promised himself driving up Madison Avenue that morning that his hand would stay steady no matter what they did to him. He read. He read it twice. Then he set it down. The property taxes have been neglected for 7 years, Finch said the way another man might announce the weather. By accepting the deed, you inherit the arrears. The current debt owed to Litchfield County is $182,400. Vivian wasn't trying to hide it anymore. She was laughing into her hand. Her eyes were watering. Oh, Theo, she gasped. Oh, sweetie, he didn't. He did. Reginald said. He really did. A money pit and a tax bill. That's so him. That's so Uncle Cornelius. Reginald leaned across the table. He patted Theo's forearm. 2 heavy, condescending pats. "Kid," he said, "if you need a loan to file for bankruptcy, you let me know. I'll set you up with a real lawyer. Discount rates, family discount." Theo looked at the hand on his arm. He looked at his uncle's face. He thought about a lot of things in that 2-second pause. He thought about his mother, who had been Reginald's younger sister, and how Reginald hadn't come to her funeral. He thought about how Vivian had been 15 years old when she stole his college acceptance letter out of the mailbox and ripped it up because she didn't think he deserved to go before her. He thought about Cornelius somewhere in a coffin in the Hartwell Mausoleum in Sleepy Hollow, laughing his miserable old laugh. And then he did something neither of them expected. He smiled. A small smile, almost gentle. "Thank you, Uncle Reginald," he said. "I appreciate the offer." Vivian stopped laughing. "What?" I said, "Thank you." Are you taking the house?" "Yes." The room shifted. Theo could feel it. He didn't know what it was. Just a small tightening of the air. Vivian's smile didn't quite know where to land. "Theo," she said. "Theo, honey, there's $182,000 in tax debt." "I heard. And the house is unlivable." "I heard that too." "You can't possibly." "I can possibly." Finch produced the brass keys, 2 of them on an old iron ring. One was a standard modern key, probably for the front door. The other was something else entirely. It was heavy, long, multi-toothed in a strange old-fashioned pattern. It looked like something out of a museum. Theo took the ring. He signed the acceptance ledger. 2 signatures. One for the deed. One for the tax obligation. Then Finch did something unusual. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and produced a small cream-colored envelope. The paper was thick, expensive. The kind of paper you only see on wedding invitations from people who don't believe in budgets. The envelope was sealed with a circle of dark red wax. Pressed into the wax was the letter H, Cornelius's personal seal. "This is for Mr. Hartwell," Finch said. He held it out toward Theo. "Mr. Theo Hartwell. To be delivered only after acceptance of the Blackthorne property. To be opened only upon arrival at Blackthorne, not before." Vivian's smile vanished. "What is that?" she said. Not a question. Finch ignored her. Theo took the envelope. The wax seal was cool against his thumb. He looked at his name written across the front in Cornelius's spidery, ink-blot handwriting. The same handwriting that had once signed a Christmas card to a 6-year-old Theo with the note, "Be useful or be quiet. Love, Uncle Cornelius." "What is that?" Vivian said again. Reginald leaned forward. His Rolex flashed in the overhead light. "Finch, what's in the envelope?" "That is a private matter," Finch said. "It's part of the estate. It is part of Mr. Theo Hartwell's inheritance, which is now his property, which, as you both have repeatedly observed in this room, is essentially nothing." Vivian's eyes narrowed. The lazy boredom was gone. Something hungrier had taken its place. Theo stood up. He put the envelope into the inside pocket of his denim jacket right next to his heart. He picked up the brass keys. He picked up the deed. He looked at his cousin and his uncle one last time. "Have a good afternoon," he said. And he walked out. He didn't look back. He didn't slow down. He took the elevator down 32 floors and walked out onto Madison Avenue, where the air smelled like exhaust and rain and pretzel carts. And for the first time in years, his hands were shaking. But not from fear. From the envelope against his chest. It was light. So light. Whatever was inside it weighed almost nothing. And yet, he could feel it humming. Theo's studio apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted shoe factory in Red Hook. The elevator was broken. It had been broken since 2019. He climbed the stairs slowly. He carried 2 grocery bags and the deed and the envelope and the weight of a family he hadn't asked to be born into. He unlocked the door. He set the groceries on the kitchen counter. He sat down on the edge of his bed, which doubled as a couch when he had company, which was almost never. He looked at the envelope. He didn't open it. The letter had been clear. Open only upon arrival at Blackthorne. So he didn't open it. Instead, he got up. He walked over to the small closet by the window. On the top shelf behind a folded canvas drop cloth was a shoebox. The box was older than he was. It had once held a pair of his mother's wedding shoes back in 1990. Now it held what was left of her. He brought the box over to the bed. He sat down again. He opened the lid. Photographs. 3 small notebooks. A pressed flower from a garden in Maine. The crucifix she used to wear before she stopped wearing it. He hadn't looked at this box in 5 years. He didn't know why he was looking at it now. But the envelope had reminded him of something. He didn't know what. He started flipping through the photographs. His parents' wedding, 1990. His mother in a simple white dress, 21 years old, holding a small bouquet of daisies. His father, who would die of pancreatic cancer when Theo was 12, looking at her like she was the only real thing in the world. Theo at 4 years old on a beach in Cape Cod. Theo at 9 missing 2 front teeth. His mother at 30 holding him on her hip. His mother at 16 before any of them existed. Sitting on the porch of her parents' house in upstate New York. And then, a photograph he didn't recognize. His hand stopped. It was black and white. The edges were curled and yellowed. His mother was in it. She looked very young, maybe 18, maybe 19. Her hair was longer than he'd ever seen it, almost to her waist. She was sitting on a bench in a park somewhere. There was a baby in her lap, a baby girl. The baby looked maybe 6 months old. She was wearing a small white knitted hat. She had her mother's eyes even at that age. Theo could see it clearly. Theo had those same eyes. So did the baby. Theo turned the photograph over. On the back, in his mother's handwriting, faded but legible, were 3 words and a date. My Cordelia, 1988. Theo stared at it. Cordelia. He didn't know anyone named Cordelia. He flipped through every photograph in the box. There was no other picture of the baby. No mention of her in any of the notebooks. He read through his mother's journals carefully, looking for the name. Cordelia. Cordy. Anything. Nothing. He sat there for a long time. The light through the window changed from gray to gold to nothing. He didn't turn on a lamp. Theo's mother had been born in 1969. In 1988, she would have been 19 years old, a year before she met his father, a year before everything started. His mother had a baby. His mother had a baby and never told him. His mother had a baby and the baby was somewhere. Or the baby was nothing now. He didn't know. He sat in the dark and thought about a lot of things. He thought about how his mother used to cry sometimes when he was a kid, alone in the kitchen at night, and how he never asked her why. He thought about how she always lit 2 candles at Christmas Mass instead of 1. He'd asked her once. She'd said, "For your father." But Theo's father died in October. Christmas was for him. The second candle had always been for someone else. He put the photograph back in the box. He put the box back in the closet. He went to bed. He didn't sleep. In the morning, he packed. He packed a duffel bag with 3 changes of clothes, his tool belt, 2 flashlights, a sleeping bag, and a thermos of coffee. He packed a small case of restoration tools. He packed the cream-colored envelope and the brass keys. He packed the photograph of his mother and the baby. He locked the apartment. He carried everything down 3 flights of stairs. He started his truck. It coughed twice the way it always did, then settled into a low rattle. He pulled out of his parking spot and headed for the BQE. Connecticut was a 2-hour drive. He took 3. He stopped at a diner outside Danbury. He drank black coffee. He stared at the photograph of the baby. He read it again. My Cordelia, 1988. He paid the check. He got back in the truck. The roads got smaller. The houses got further apart. Stone walls climbed the hills. Maples turned the world the color of fire. By the time he got to Litchfield County, he was driving through a postcard. Then the postcard ended. The road to Blackthorne was a private drive. It had been a private drive for 150 years. It hadn't been maintained in 20. Tree branches scraped his windshield like fingers. Potholes the size of bathtubs. He had to put the truck in low gear. The driveway curved. The trees opened. And Blackthorne appeared. Theo's first thought was that the photographs hadn't done it justice. The house was enormous. It was a Victorian monster, 3 stories with a wraparound porch and a turret on the southeast corner, and a slate roof that had collapsed in 3 places. The east wing was being swallowed by vines. Some of the windows were boarded. Others were just gone the glass, long since fallen out the openings, staring out at the overgrown lawn like sockets. It was beautiful. That was Theo's second thought. Anyone else would have seen a wreck, a tear down, a money pit, a liability. Theo saw something else. He saw the carved corbels under the eaves hand-cut by someone who died 100 years ago. He saw the original slate, the kind that had been quarried in Vermont and shipped down by rail in the 1880s. He saw the wraparound porch with its bowed columns, each one turned on a lathe by a person whose name was lost to history, but whose work was still standing. It was beautiful. It was dying. He parked the truck. He sat for a long moment with his hands on the steering wheel. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his denim jacket and took out the envelope. He broke the wax seal. He pulled out a single sheet of cream-colored paper. There were exactly 12 words on the page, written in Cornelius's spidery hand. Go see Rosalind Ashford, 14 Maple Lane. She's been waiting 20 years. Theo read the words. He read them again. Then he looked at Blackthorne. He looked at the keys in his other hand. He looked at the deed sitting on the passenger seat. He thought about his mother sitting on a bench somewhere in 1988, holding a baby girl in a white knitted hat. He started the truck. He turned around in the overgrown gravel circle. He drove back down the rutted driveway into town, looking for Maple Lane. The town was called Litchfield Crossing. 380 residents, one stoplight, a post office, a hardware store, a small library, a bakery, and a coffee shop called the Tin Cup that had been there since 1962. The streets were lined with maples. The houses were small and white and old. Maple Lane was 1 block off the main road. Number 14 was the third house on the right. It was a small Cape Cod, white with green shutters with a vegetable garden in the side yard, and a wooden swing on the front porch, and a wreath of dried lavender on the door. Smoke was coming out of the chimney. Smoke that smelled like apples and butter and cinnamon. Theo parked at the curb. He sat in the truck for a long minute. Then he got out. He walked up the brick path. The door opened before he reached it. A woman stood in the doorway. She was 68 years old, maybe 69. Her hair was the color of fresh snow pulled back in a low, soft knot. She was wearing a navy blue cardigan over a faded yellow sundress. There was flour on her hands. She looked at him. Her eyes were a very pale blue. They were the kind of eyes that have seen a lot and learned to hold it gently. "Oh," she said, "just that. Oh, you're Theo," she said. He nodded. He couldn't speak yet. "Come in," she said. "Come in. I just took the pies out of the oven. There's coffee. There's so much coffee. I've been making coffee for 2 hours like a crazy person. Because I knew. I just knew." He stepped through the door. The house smelled like apples and butter and 100 other things he couldn't name. A small terrier was sleeping on a knit blanket by the fireplace. The walls were covered in framed photographs. Some were old, some were new. There were paintings, 2 small ones, watercolors of the Connecticut hills. She led him to a kitchen with yellow walls and a round oak table. She poured coffee into a white china cup. She set a slice of apple pie in front of him. She sat down across from him. For a long moment, she just looked at him. "You have your mother's mouth," she said. "Did anyone ever tell you that?" Theo couldn't answer. He put his hand over his mouth. He was 35 years old, and he hadn't cried in front of anyone since his father's funeral. But he sat in Rosalind Ashford's kitchen, and he had to put his hand over his mouth so he wouldn't make a sound. She waited. She didn't reach for him. She didn't say anything soothing. She just waited. After a while, he lowered his hand. "How did you know my mother?" he said. "I didn't know your mother well," she said. "I only met her twice, but Cornelius talked about her quite a lot. Toward the end. He talked about all of you. Toward the end. You knew Cornelius. I knew Cornelius. For how long?" 43 years. Theo set down the coffee cup. 43. I met him in 1983. He hired me to consult on the restoration of the Litchfield Library. I was 25 years old. I'd just finished my master's in historic preservation. He was 48. He was already very rich and very angry and very tired of being both. We worked together for 16 months on that library. We became friends, not the kind of friends people gossip about. The other kind. The harder kind. What kind? The kind that lasts. Theo turned the coffee cup in his hand. The china was warm. He focused on the warmth. He focused on his breathing. He never mentioned you, he said, to anyone. No, Rosalind said. He wouldn't have. He was a private man about the things that mattered. Vivian, Reginald, especially to them. They think they knew him. They knew his wallet. Theo let out a single sharp breath. It wasn't quite a laugh. It wasn't quite anything. Rosalind got up. She went to a small cabinet next to the refrigerator. She opened it and took down a wooden box. The box was old, walnut by the look of it. Hand-cut dovetail joints. The brass clasp was tarnished. She set the box on the table between them. He left this here for me to give to you, she said. 8 years ago, he said one day you would come knocking. He said it might be soon. It might be in 20 years. But you would come, and when you did, I was to give this to you and tell you everything I know. Theo looked at the box. He left it here 8 years ago. 8 years ago this March. What did he tell you? Rosalind sat back down. She folded her hands on the table. Her knuckles were a little swollen with age. There was a thin silver ring on her right hand, just a plain band. He told me he had a great nephew, she said. He told me you had refused him. He told me you were the only person in his family who had ever looked him in the eye and told him no. He was angry. He was proud. Theo blinked. Proud. He cried in this kitchen, Theo, the night you told him no. He drove up from the city. It was nearly midnight. He sat where you're sitting now, and he cried. He said, I don't remember his exact words, but it was something like, the boy is the only one. The boy is the only one who isn't already broken. Theo couldn't see her clearly anymore. His eyes had gone soft. He blinked. He looked down at the table. I didn't know. He wouldn't have let you know. I called him a tyrant. He probably was a tyrant. I haven't spoken to him in 5 years. He spoke to you every day. What? Open the box. Theo opened the box. Inside were 3 things. A small black and white photograph. The same kind of photograph he had at home. His mother. Younger than he had ever seen her. 16 maybe. Standing in front of a brick building somewhere. Smiling at someone behind the camera. A folded letter. The paper was thin and old. The fold lines were soft from having been opened and closed many times. And a small leather notebook. Brown. Worn smooth. The kind of notebook a man carries in his pocket for years. Theo picked up the letter. He unfolded it carefully. The handwriting on the letter was his mother's. The familiar slope. The looped Y's. He hadn't seen her handwriting in many years. The letter was dated June 4th, 1988. It was addressed to Cornelius. His hands began to shake. He set the letter on the table so he could read it without trembling. He read it. Dear Cornelius, I'm writing this from the Home for Unwed Mothers in Albany. I'll be here for another 6 weeks. The sisters here are kind. They don't ask questions. I think you would like them. They remind me of the nuns at our old school in Yonkers. The baby came on Tuesday. A girl. She has dark hair and the longest fingers. I named her Cordelia because you and I used to read King Lear together when we were children, and Cordelia was always the one who told the truth. I'm not keeping her Cornelius. I can't. I'm 19. The father is gone. I have nowhere to go. Mother says if I bring her home, she'll never speak to me again. I don't know if Mother means it, but I don't have it in me to find out. There is a family in Vermont. The sisters say they are good people. The wife is a librarian. The husband is a teacher. They cannot have children of their own. They will love her. I am telling you this because you are the only person in our family who has ever been kind to me without wanting something. I'm also telling you because I think one day when I'm older, I will not be able to live with what I'm doing. And when that day comes, I want at least one person in this world to know that I had a daughter, and her name was Cordelia, and I loved her enough to give her away. Please do not tell anyone. Please do not try to find her. She is going to have a good life, a better life than I can give her. Let her have it. Your loving niece, Margaret. Theo set the letter down. He didn't cry. He had passed crying. He had moved into a place that was very quiet. He picked up the notebook. He opened it. The first page was dated April 19th, 1988. The handwriting was Cornelius's. Theo flipped through the pages. It was a record, a logbook, a careful decade-by-decade chronicle of a life that did not belong to him. April 19th, 1988. M has had the baby. A girl, Cordelia. The family in Burlington is named Brooks. Good people. Confirmed by Father O'Leary. September 1989. C is 1 year and 4 months old. Reading reports from the Brooks family through Sister Agnes. C is walking. C is healthy. May 1992. C has started preschool. Top of her class in art and singing. October 1996. C has lost her 2 front teeth. Photograph received through Sister Agnes. The hair is darker now. The eyes are still the same. The entries went on, and on, and on. Theo skipped ahead. June 2010. M has died. Pancreatic cancer like her husband. C does not know. I have not told her. I cannot tell her. The Brooks family is her family now. To intrude would be a cruelty. He skipped ahead again. June 2016. C has married. A man named David Brooks Mills. A kind man by all reports. A carpenter. April 2018. C has had a daughter. They named her Margaret, after her grandmother. Without knowing, Theo's hand stopped on that page. They named her Margaret. without knowing. He found her, Theo said. His voice was very quiet. He found my mother's daughter. He watched her for 38 years. Yes, Rosalind said. He never told her. He never told anyone until last winter. He told me. He said he was running out of time. He said he didn't know what to do. He said he should have told your mother he'd found her while your mother was still alive. He said the regret was eating him. Where is she now? Burlington, Vermont. She's a third-grade teacher. She has 2 daughters, Margaret and Lily. She lives in a small white house with a blue door and a garden of black-eyed Susans. Theo stared at her. You've been there. Once, Rosalind said, 2 years ago. Cornelius asked me to drive up and just walk past the house. He wanted to know what the street smelled like in autumn. He was too sick to drive himself. And you went. And I went. Theo put his face in his hands. It was a great deal. It was a great deal at once. A sister. A sister he had never known. A sister who had been waiting in Vermont for 38 years. For someone to remember she existed. A mother who had carried a secret all her life and died still carrying it. An old man who had stalked the edges of a stranger's life for 4 decades because he loved his niece and didn't know how else to be useful. He sat in Rosalind's kitchen for a long time. Rosalind did not speak. She sliced the apple pie. She poured more coffee. The terrier got up from the blanket and walked over and rested his chin on Theo's foot. After a while, Theo lifted his face. What do I do? He said. It wasn't a question to anyone in particular. It might have been to Cornelius, to his mother, to Rosalind, to himself. Rosalind reached across the table and took his hand. Her hand was warm and small and had flour still on the knuckles. You don't do anything tonight, she said. I have to. You have to eat your pie. You have to sleep somewhere. You can stay in the guest room. Tomorrow you can decide. Decide what? Decide what kind of brother you want to be. The word landed in his chest like a hammer. Brother. He hadn't been a brother to anyone since he was born. He had been an only child, an only nephew, an only grandson, the only Hartwell who had refused to play the game. Brother. He swallowed. He nodded. He ate the pie. It was the best pie he had ever eaten in his life. He slept that night in Rosalind's guest bedroom under a quilt that her own grandmother had sewn. The window faced east. He woke at dawn to the sound of a wood thrush singing in the maples. He drove out to Blackthorne at 7 o'clock in the morning with a thermos of Rosalind's coffee and the wooden box on the seat beside him. The house was waiting. In the daylight, it was even more enormous and even more broken. But Theo wasn't seeing the broken parts anymore. He was seeing the bones. He was seeing where the foundation was good, where the roof beams could still be saved, where the original mahogany paneling in the foyer was just under 100 years of grime. He carried his tools inside. He spent the morning doing a structural survey, top to bottom, room to room. He took notes. He measured. He took photographs with his phone. By noon, he had a list of every problem in the house. By 2, he was in the library. The library was on the ground floor off the main hall. It was a long room with floor-to-ceiling mahogany bookcases on 3 sides and a massive stone fireplace on the 4th. Most of the books had rotted to pulp. The carpet was a mat of mold. The windows were so covered in ivy that the light came in green. Theo stood in the doorway. He was thinking about load-bearing walls. He was thinking about the cost of restoring the fireplace. He was not thinking about the dust. But the dust caught his eye. The dust on the floor was 20 years thick. 20 years of total stillness. It should have been a smooth gray blanket from wall to wall. It wasn't. There were footprints in it. Recent footprints. A man's footprints by the size of them. Leather-soled. They came in from the hallway. They walked directly to the wall beside the fireplace. They walked back out. Theo followed them. The footprints stopped at a decorative wooden panel built into the wall. The panel was about the size of a small door. It was carved to look like part of the bookcase. But there was a hairline gap around its edge that shouldn't have been there. He looked at the brass molding around the panel. It had been pried at. The marks were fresh. He pushed. The panel swung open on hidden hinges. Behind it was a steel wall safe. The safe door was hanging open by an inch. The lock had been drilled through. The hole was clean and recent. Someone with a high-quality cobalt bit. Someone who knew what they were doing. Theo pulled the door the rest of the way open. The safe was empty. There was nothing inside except a film of metal shavings, and resting on the bottom shelf, a single folded piece of expensive cream-colored stationery. He picked it up. He unfolded it. The handwriting was sweeping and elegant. He knew it immediately. Dearest Theo, did you really think Cornelius was going to leave a hidden vault to you? He told us about this little stash months before he died. Uncle Reggie and I took the liberty of driving up here last week to clear it out. The bearer bonds are safe in my Tribeca penthouse. They were quite valuable. Several million by Reggie's appraisal. Enjoy the black mold and the tax bills, cousin. Kisses, Vivian. Theo read the note once. He read it again. And then he did something he didn't expect. He laughed. He stood in the middle of a rotting Victorian library in a dead old man's spite house, holding a note from a cousin who had robbed him before he'd even seen the body in the ground. And he laughed. A short, surprised laugh. Because he didn't care. He didn't care about the bearer bonds. He didn't care about Cornelius's secret stash. He didn't care about Vivian or Reginald or any of it. He cared about a third-grade teacher named Cordelia in a small white house with a blue door in Burlington, Vermont. He cared about a baby named Margaret, who had been named after a grandmother she had never met. He cared about a mother who had lit 2 candles every Christmas for 30 years. He folded Vivian's note. He put it in his pocket. He turned and walked out of the library. In the main hallway, he stopped. The architect in him stopped him because something was wrong about the hallway. He'd been walking past it all morning without noticing. But now he was noticing. The way the library wall stopped too soon. The way the dining room wall on the other side of the hall also stopped too soon. The way the dimensions didn't fit the exterior of the house. He pulled out his laser measure. He shot the inside walls. He paced the outside of the house. He shot them again. There were 13 feet of house missing, 13 feet of space running right through the center of the ground floor that didn't appear on the inside of any room. Theo stood very still in the hallway. A small smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. Vivian and Reginald had found a safe. They had taken what was in it. They had laughed at him. They had thought they had won. But Vivian and Reginald were corporate vultures who did not know the first thing about 19th century Victorian architecture. And Theo Hartwell did. He looked at the wall. He looked at the heavy iron key in his pocket, the one that didn't fit any door he'd seen. He thought about a sister in Vermont. He thought about a great uncle who had watched her from a distance for 38 years. He thought about a house that had been waiting for someone with eyes to see it. "Okay, Cornelius," he said quietly. "Okay, old man. Let's see what you really left me." He walked out to his truck. He came back with a crowbar. The afternoon light was slanting through the green windows. The dust hung in it like gold. He raised the crowbar. He began to pry. The crowbar bit into the wainscoting. The wood shrieked. Plaster dust rained down in a soft gray snow. Theo pulled back, levered, pulled. A long strip of paneling came away in his hands. He stopped. Because what was behind the paneling was not lath and plaster. It was steel. Heavy, modern, reinforced steel. Painted to look like the same plaster as the rest of the wall. Textured so carefully that you could run your hand across it and not feel the lie. Theo set the crowbar down. He pressed his palm against the steel. Cold. Real. He pulled another strip of wainscoting off the wall. Then another. He worked his way along the corridor in the green-gold afternoon light. With every strip more steel. With every strip more proof that Cornelius Hartwell had been building something here that he did not want anyone to find. By 4 o'clock, Theo had exposed an 8-foot section of pure reinforced wool. By 4:30, he had found the seam. By 5, he had found the keyhole. It was hidden behind a faux electrical outlet 6 inches off the floor. A small brass plate that swung aside when he pressed the right corner. Behind it, a heavy mechanical lock. The kind of lock you don't see on modern doors. The kind that took a key with 7 teeth. Theo went out to his truck. He came back with the iron key. He fitted into the slot. And he stopped. Because something inside him had locked up. Theo, wait. Theo, you don't know what's on the other side. He stood there with his hand on the key, and he thought of a lot of things at once. He thought of his sister in Vermont, who didn't know he existed. He thought of his mother lighting 2 Christmas candles. He thought of a 43-year friendship that he had not known about until yesterday. He thought of a great uncle who had watched a stranger's life from a distance because he didn't know any other way to say, "I'm sorry." He thought, open it tomorrow. Sleep first. Think first. Accept. Except his hand turned the key. He didn't decide to. His hand decided for him. The tumblers fell. Deep inside the wall, something heavy and mechanical hummed. A pneumatic seal hissed. A 5-foot section of the wall popped outward by 1/2 an inch. Theo hooked his fingers into the gap. He pulled. and the wall opened. It opened like a vault door, which is what it was, 12 inches thick, hinged on a steel pivot. Cold air rolled out of the darkness. It smelled like ozone, like clean metal, like a place that had not been touched by rot in a very long time. Theo stood at the threshold. He looked into the dark. He stepped back. He went to his truck. He came back with his work light. He clicked it on, and he stepped down into the belly of his great-uncle's secret. Concrete stairs, 20 of them. He counted on the way down, because counting kept his heart from punching out of his chest. At the bottom, his boot hit a rubberized floor mat. A motion sensor clicked. He heard it, the soft electronic pop of relays engaging. The lights came on, not all at once, in banks. One row, then the next, then the next. Industrial LED panels marching across a ceiling that extended further than the house above. Theo stepped fully into the room. His work light, suddenly useless, dangled from his hand. He forgot to breathe. It was a museum. A private, climate-controlled, stainless steel-lined museum. The walls were paneled in spotless brushed steel. The floor was polished concrete with drainage channels running along the edges. The ceiling was set with HVAC grates, motion sensors, and security cameras whose green lights were not blinking. They had been deactivated. By the will, probably. By Cornelius's instructions to the lawyers. Theo took 3 steps forward. He stopped. To his left, parked under a halogen spotlight, was a car. A car the color of a midnight sky. A car with the sweeping fenders and the long, low hood of an art form that no longer existed. He had seen one like it once, in a museum in Pennsylvania, behind ropes, behind glass, behind guards. This one had no ropes. Theo could reach out and touch it. He didn't. He kept walking. Glass cases lined the room. Reinforced glass. Each case lit from within by a soft museum-quality light. In the first case, a small book. Vellum pages. Iron gall ink. The original binding worn but intact. A medieval illuminated Bible. In the next case, a tray of coins. Gold. He knew enough to know they were not supposed to exist in such quantity. They had been recalled, melted down. Only a handful had survived. He kept walking. A case of uncut diamonds, rough, cloudy, brilliant under the spotlight. A case of antique watches, pocket watches, movements from Geneva Glashütte Lancaster. On the far wall paintings, 3 of them. Theo had spent his life around buildings. He didn't know art the way he knew architecture, but he knew enough to know these were the kind of paintings that did not turn up in basements in Connecticut. They were the kind that disappeared from public records 60 years ago and were quietly assumed to be lost. They were not lost. They were here. Theo's knees did something strange. He sat down. He sat down on the polished concrete floor in front of a painting of a woman reading a letter by a window. And he put his head in his hands and he made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Because Vivian was in her Tribeca penthouse right now, with a stack of bearer bonds that she thought made her a millionaire. And 1 floor below her, somewhere in this hidden room, was enough wealth to buy her building. enough wealth to buy her block. And it had been left to him. Him, the boy who restored door hinges for a living. He sat on the floor for a long time. After a while, he stood up. He walked deeper into the room. In the exact center of the space sat a small antique mahogany writing desk, a green banker's lamp on its leather surface. The lamp was on. It had been on, Theo realized, since the lights had triggered. It had been waiting. On the desk sat one thick, cream-colored envelope. His name was written across the front in Cornelius's spidery hand. Theo, just that. He sat down in the desk chair. It was a leather wingback, old, worn smooth on the arms. He broke the wax seal. He unfolded the letter. It was long. Cornelius's voice rose up off the paper like a man speaking from the next room. Theo, if you are reading this letter, several things have happened, and I would like to mark them. First, you came. You did not throw the deed at the county clerk and run when you saw the tax lien. That is the first thing. The second is that you used your eyes. The third is that you saw what was right in front of you, which is a thing very few people ever manage to do. I imagine Vivian and Reginald have already broken into the decoy safe in the library. I left them a very inviting trail. I dropped hints. I let Reginald see the architect's plans I had drawn up for the safe 3 years before I died. I knew exactly what they would do. They are predictable in the way that all greedy people are predictable. The certificates they took are in fact authentic. They will appraise. They will scan. They will pass every test that does not involve actually reading the fine print. Theo, you should know that I owned a corporation called Hartwell Continental Holdings. I created it in 1991. It is a shell. It holds nothing. It owes everything. $50 million in unfunded pension liabilities to former employees of a small mining operation I bought and gutted in 1989. Several million more in environmental fines pending against the same operation, which is currently under sealed federal investigation. The certificates Vivian took are the sole remaining equity in that corporation. The moment she or Reginald transfers them into their name and tries to liquidate them, they will inherit personally, and without corporate protection, every single liability attached to that company. I built that trap for them, Theo. I built it slowly. I built it well. And I built it because I had spent decades watching them treat people like livestock. And I wanted at least once before I died to give them a problem they could not buy their way out of. The contents of this room are different. Everything you see here was purchased through anonymous trusts. The trusts have been quietly transferred to bearer status. Possession is ownership. The man holding the iron key holds the room. That man is you. There is a list in the top drawer of the desk in front of you. It is not a list of treasures. It is a list of names. 23 of them. Theo, I have done a great deal of damage in my life. I bought failing companies and dismantled them. I evicted people. I broke unions. I ruined small businesses to clear land I never used. In 1987, I forced the foreclosure of a bakery in Detroit, owned by a family named Okafor. The father, Augustus, died of a heart attack 2 months later. His son, Marcus, was 16. There is a name and an address for every person on this list. Marcus is the first. He is 55 now. He drives a truck. He should not have been driving a truck. He should have been a baker. I do not have the time left to fix this. I tried. In the last year of my life, I tried and I failed. I am too sick. I am too old. I do not even know if these people would let me into their homes after what I did to them. But you, Theo, you restore things. That is what you do. I am giving you the means. I am asking you to do the work. Cordelia is on the list. Margaret is on the list. They are at the top. Margaret was your mother. Cordelia is your sister. Margaret never told you. She made me promise. I kept my promise for 38 years. I kept it past her death. I am breaking it now. Theo, the only way I can. By dying. By leaving this letter where you would have to find it. Forgive me for not telling you while I was alive. Forgive me for not telling Cordelia. Forgive me for not telling Margaret that I had found the baby, and that the baby was well, and that I had been watching her grow up from a distance all those years she was crying alone in her kitchen at Christmas. Some things I did not have the courage for, even when I had courage for everything else. This is your inheritance, Theo. Not the gold, not the paintings, not the car, the list, the names, the chance to make right the things I could not. You always told me I had built nothing but ruin. I am giving you now the chance to build something else. Your uncle Cornelius. Theo set the letter down on the desk. He sat in the wingback chair for a long time. The car gleamed in the spotlight. The woman in the painting read her letter. The lights hummed. He pulled open the top drawer of the desk. Inside was a manila folder. Thick. Held shut with a rubber band that had gone brittle with age. He slid the rubber band off. He opened the folder. The first page was a list. 23 names. 23 addresses. 23 sums. The sums were not small. They added up at the bottom of the page to a number with 8 digits. Marcus Okafor was at the top. Cordelia Hartwell Brooks was second. Margaret Hartwell was third, with a small note in Cornelius's hand beside the name. Deceased. June 2010. No further action possible. Theo read the list once. He closed the folder. He sat very still. He thought about a lot of things. He thought about how a man could love his niece for 40 years and never tell her he had found her lost child. He thought about how a woman could light 2 candles every Christmas for 30 years and never speak the second name aloud. He thought about how he had spent his life restoring buildings, because buildings could not look at you and refuse to be saved. People could. People did. He thought about how easy it would be to take this folder and burn it. Take the gold. Take the paintings. Take the car. Sell everything. Live the rest of his life in comfort. Never knock on any door he hadn't been invited to. He thought about it for about 30 seconds. Then he got up and walked back to the stairs, closed the vault behind him, replaced the wainscoting. He drove to Rosalind's house. It was after dark. Lights in her kitchen windows. The terrier barked twice when he pulled up. Rosalind came to the door in her cardigan. "You found it," she said. She didn't ask. "You knew about it." "I knew there was something." I didn't know what. There's a lot. I imagine there is. He stood on her porch in the cold. I have to go to Vermont, he said. Rosalind nodded. I have to find her. I have to see her. I don't. I don't know what I'm going to say. You don't have to know. I have to know something. You have to be there. That is all you have to be. You have to be a person who is there. She put a hand on his arm. Theo. What? Will you let me come with you? He looked at her in the porch light. Her hair was silver. Her eyes were the pale blue he was already starting to think of as kind. He thought of the 43 years she had given to a difficult man, without ever asking him for anything but his company. Yes, he said. Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. I'll pack a bag. You don't have to pack a bag. I want to pack a bag. Okay. He turned to go. Theo. Yes. Eat first. He laughed. It was a small laugh, but it was a real one. Yes, ma'am. They drove north in his truck. The leaves were past their peak. The light came through them in soft, smoldering reds and yellows. Rosalind brought a thermos of coffee and a tin of shortbread. She didn't talk much. She let him think. In Brattleboro, she finally said, "She'll be afraid of you at first." I know. Don't promise her anything you can't keep. I won't. Don't ask her for anything. I won't. Just say what you came to say. And what is that? Rosalind looked out the window. You came to tell her she had a mother who loved her. Theo gripped the steering wheel. Yes, he said. Then say that. Burlington came up around 4 in the afternoon. The town sat on the hills above Lake Champlain. The sky over the lake was the color of pewter. They drove past brick buildings and old churches and a bookstore with a cat sleeping in the window. The elementary school was on the south side of town. Brick, built in 1962. A flagpole. A small playground in the back. Theo parked across the street. He sat in the truck. I can't go in, he said. You don't have to go in. I can't go in. The principal. I would scare her. I would scare the children. So don't go in. What do I do? Wait. For what? For 3 o'clock. It was 2:45. They sat in the truck. Rosalind poured a cup of coffee. Theo couldn't drink it. His mouth was dry. At 2:55, a bell rang inside the building. Faint. Far away. At 3 o'clock, the front doors opened. Children poured out. A river of them. Backpacks, jackets, crooked hats, mittens. Their voices high and bright in the cold afternoon air. Buses idled at the curb. Mothers waited in cars. A few teachers stood on the steps watching. Theo couldn't see her at first. Then, a woman came out of the building. She was tall. 5'8", maybe 5'9". Dark hair pulled back in a loose braid. She was wearing a long navy coat over a green dress. She had a tote bag full of books slung over her shoulder. She walked the way his mother had walked. The same loose, easy stride and the same slight tilt of the head when she was listening. She knelt down on the sidewalk. A small girl ran up to her. Maybe 8 years old. Same dark hair. Same long face. The little girl threw her arms around her mother's neck. The woman laughed. Theo could not hear the laugh through the truck window, but he could see it. He could see the shape of his own mother's mouth. He couldn't speak. Rosalind put her hand on his arm. A smaller girl came running after the first one, maybe 5 years old. Her braid was crooked. She was carrying a paper crown that she had clearly made herself in school. The woman gathered them both. Theo watched. 3 of them walking together toward a small navy blue station wagon parked at the curb. His sister, his nieces, Margaret, and Lily. Margaret, named for the grandmother she would never meet. Theo put both hands on the steering wheel and lowered his head and breathed. "Drive home," Rosalind said softly. "What?" "Drive home. Today is not the day. I came all this way. You came to see her. You have seen her. That is enough for today. I have to talk to her. Yes, but not in a parking lot. Not in front of her children. Not with no warning. Not today." He nodded. He drove home. In the truck somewhere near the New Hampshire border, he started to cry. He drove and cried at the same time, quietly. He didn't pull over. Rosalind didn't say anything. She put her hand on his arm and left it there. 2 weeks passed. Theo went back to Blackthorne. He worked. He cleaned the library down to the floorboards. He saved the mahogany. He pulled the rotten carpet. He cleared the ivy off the east wing. He patched the worst of the roof with tarps to get through the winter. He didn't go back to the vault. He let it sit. He thought about it every day. He thought about the woman in the painting reading her letter. He thought about the car waiting in the dark. But he didn't go down. He didn't take anything. He didn't sell anything. He was waiting for something. He didn't know what. He wrote a letter to Cordelia. He drafted it 11 times. He threw away 10 of them. The 11th was 3 sentences long. "Dear Cordelia, my name is Theo Hartwell. I have something that belonged to your mother, and I would very much like to give it to you in person when you are ready. There is no rush and no obligation and no expectation." He wrote his phone number at the bottom. He folded the letter into an envelope. He put a single black and white photograph in with the letter. The one from his mother's shoebox. The bench in the park, 1988. 19-year-old Margaret holding her baby girl in a white knitted hat. He addressed the envelope to Cordelia Hartwell Brooks, in care of the elementary school in Burlington. Personal and confidential. He mailed it. He waited. 8 days passed. His phone rang on a Tuesday night. A 802 area code, Vermont. Theo had been sanding a piece of mahogany trim. He set the sandpaper down. He looked at the phone for 2 full rings before he picked up. "Hello. Is this Theo?" "Yes." A long silence. "This is Cordelia." "Yes." "I got your letter." "Yes." Another silence. Theo could hear her breathing. He could hear in the background the soft hum of a dishwasher. A children's television show playing in another room. "How did you get this picture?" she said. Her voice was careful, not unkind, not warm, just careful. It belonged to my mother. Your mother is Margaret Hartwell. A small, sharp inhale. Margaret Hartwell. She would have been your mother too. Would have been. She died in 2010. The silence after that one was very long. I didn't know she was. I know. I never tried to find her. I didn't think she wanted to be found. I have a mother. I have a wonderful mother. I'm sure you do. I have a family. I know. I don't. I don't know what you want. I don't want anything. Everybody wants something. I want you to know she loved you. I want you to know she lit a candle for you every Christmas for 30 years. I want you to know she named me Theo and not Cordelia because the name was already yours. I want you to know that she... His throat closed. He couldn't finish the sentence. He swallowed. That's all, he said. That's all I want. A pause. Theo. Yes. Can you call me back? In a few days. I need to sit with this. Yes. I need to talk to my husband. Of course. I need to think. Take as long as you need. You're not going to. Show up. No. Promise. I promise. Okay. I'm gonna hang up now. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Okay, goodbye. The line clicked. Theo set the phone on the workbench. He sat down on a sawhorse. He laughed. Once. Then he cried for the second time in many years. The next morning, Rosalind came over. She didn't ask. She just made coffee in the kitchen he was slowly bringing back to life, and she sat across from him at the rough plank table he was using until he could restore the original. She called, he said, and she needs time. Of course she does. She said she has a family already. She does. That doesn't change anything about you. He looked at her. Doesn't it? No, Theo. You're not asking her to give up her family. You're offering her another one. That is a different thing. People can hold more than one family. It's hard, but it's possible. He nodded. He drank his coffee. He went back to work. October bled into November. The Connecticut hills went bare. The first hard frost killed what was left of the rose garden on the south side of Blackthorne. Theo cut everything back. He spread mulch. He saved what bulbs he could. He worked on the library. He worked on the mahogany. He worked on the kitchen where the floor had rotted through in 3 places. He didn't go back to the vault. He didn't touch the list. He waited for Cordelia. She called again on a Sunday afternoon. He was on the roof hammering down loose flashing. The wind was sharp. He almost didn't hear the phone over the hammering. Hello, it's Cordelia. Hi. I talked to my husband. Yes. His name is David. Okay. He thinks I should come see you. A pause. Just me. Not the girls. Not yet. Just me. Yes. He thinks I should see where you live. And he thinks I should bring my mother. My adoptive mother. Her name is Helen. She's 73. She knew. She always knew there was a birth mother somewhere. She has carried that for a long time. Theo sat down on the roof. Yes, he said. Yes, bring her. This Saturday. Yes. I want to come during the day. I want to be home for dinner. Yes. I don't want to spend the night. Of course. This is a lot, Theo. I know. I don't know what I'm walking into. I'll be at the door when you come up the drive. She came on Saturday. She came in the navy blue station wagon. Cordelia at the wheel. An older woman with short silver hair and a long gray cardigan in the passenger seat. Helen Brooks, Cordelia's mother, the librarian's wife who had raised her. Theo was on the front porch. Rosalind was inside making sandwiches and coffee. He had not slept the night before. He had cleaned the foyer twice. He had moved a chair, moved it back, moved it again. He had stood in the middle of the parlor at 3 a.m. and thought about everything he was gonna say. When the car pulled into the gravel circle, he forgot all of it. The doors opened. Cordelia got out first. She was even taller in person than she had looked at the school. Her hair was loose today. It came down past her shoulders. She was wearing a long brown coat and her cheeks were pink from the cold. She looked at the house. Her mouth opened. "Oh," she said softly. Helen got out of the passenger side. She came around the car. She put her hand on her daughter's arm. Theo walked down the steps. He stopped at the bottom. He looked at Cordelia. She looked at him. Neither of them moved for a long second. Then she said, "You have my mother's eyes." Her voice cracked on the word mother. "You have her mouth," he said. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Helen squeezed her arm. "Go on, honey," Helen said. "Go on." Cordelia crossed the gravel. She didn't quite hug him. She put her hand on his shoulder. Just that. Her hand was warm through his flannel shirt. He put his hand over hers. They stood like that for a moment. Then she stepped back. She looked up at Blackthorne. "This is the house," she said. "This is the house. It's enormous. It is. It's beautiful. It will be. You're restoring it. Yes. By yourself. Mostly." She nodded slowly. "Theo." "Yes. Show me everything." He showed them everything. He showed them the foyer with its restored brass fittings. He showed them the library where he had pulled up the moldy carpet and discovered the original wide plank floor underneath. He showed them the kitchen and the dining room and the parlor and the music room. He showed them the bay window in the master bedroom where you could see the whole valley. In the library, he stopped. He had taken the photographs out of his mother's shoebox. He had laid them out on a long oak table, every picture he had of Margaret, every picture his sister had never seen. Cordelia looked at the table. She looked at him. She walked over to the table. She picked up the picture of her mother at 16 sitting on the porch in upstate New York. She had freckles, Cordelia said. In the summer, she did. My daughter Margaret has freckles. Yes. She picked up another picture. Margaret at 21 in her wedding dress. She was so young. She was. Did she? Did she have a good life? He thought about how to answer. She had a hard life, he said. But she had me and she had my father for as long as she had him. And she had a small house in Rhode Island where she planted tomatoes every year. She was a kind woman. She was a private woman. She didn't talk much about the past. But she lit a candle for you. Every Christmas. 2 candles. One for my father after he died and one for someone else. She never said who. Until I read the letter, I didn't know. But it was you. It was always you. Cordelia's hands shook around the photograph. Helen behind her was crying quietly. Theo, Cordelia said. Yes. I would like to come back. Whenever you want. With the girls. Whenever you want. And Theo. Yes. I would like you to come to Vermont for Thanksgiving, if you can. My family. We would. We would like you to be there. The word family. He held himself very still so he would not break. Yes, he said. Yes, he said again. I would like that very much. That night, after they had gone after the station wagon had disappeared down the long rutted drive, Theo and Rosalind sat in the kitchen. Rosalind poured 2 small glasses of bourbon. She slid one across the table. She raised hers. To Margaret, she said. To Margaret. They drank. Theo set down his glass. He looked at the window. It was dark outside. He could not see the road from here. But he knew the road. He knew where it went. He thought of the basement. He thought of the iron key. He thought of the list. 23 names. One of them just visited him. One of them just hugged him without quite hugging him. One of them just asked him to Thanksgiving. 21 to go. Rosalind, he said. Yes. There's a man named Marcus Okafor in Detroit. She looked at him over the rim of her glass. Yes, she said. His father died of a heart attack in 1987, 2 months after Cornelius forced the foreclosure on their bakery. Yes, Marcus drives a truck for a living. He should have been a baker. Yes. I think I'm going to Detroit. Rosalind set down her glass. She smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had waited 43 years to see something she had not been sure she would ever see. When? She said. As soon as the roof is on. Take me with you. Always. In her Tribeca penthouse 400 miles south on the same Sunday night, Vivian Hartwell sat at her glass desk and pulled a leather portfolio from her wall safe. She unzipped it. She slid out a single bearer bond, embossed paper, gold foil seal, serial number in the upper right corner. She held it up to the lamp. She smiled. Idiot cousin, she said softly to the empty room. She thought of Theo in his rotting house with his tax bill. And she laughed once the way she had laughed in the conference room, and she put the bond back in the portfolio. She would call her banker in the morning. She would set up a transfer through her Swiss account. She would not tell Reginald until the money was wired. He would want a bigger cut than she felt like giving him. She was 32 years old, and she felt for the first time in her life untouchable. The serial number, she didn't look at the one in the lower left corner that no buyer would notice for at least another 48 hours, said HCH 1991, Hartwell Continental Holdings. The trap clicked very quietly somewhere in the basement of a federal building where an investigator had been monitoring those exact serial numbers for 9 months. Outside Vivian's window, Manhattan glittered. In Connecticut, in a small kitchen at Blackthorne, Theo Hartwell rinsed 2 bourbon glasses and set them in the rack to dry. He turned off the kitchen light. He walked through the dark hallway past the library, past the dining room, past the section of restored wainscoting that hid a 13-foot vault and a painting and a list of names. He climbed the stairs to the bedroom he had set up on the 2nd floor. He lay down on the bed. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he thought, tomorrow we begin. Thanksgiving came on a Thursday with a sky the color of old pewter. Theo drove north. He didn't take the truck. He took Rosalind's car. A green Subaru with 200,000 miles on it, and a back seat that smelled faintly of dog and lavender. Rosalind sat in the passenger seat. She wore her good cardigan, the navy one. She had a bouquet of dried hydrangeas on her lap and a tin of shortbread cookies at her feet. She didn't speak much. She knew him by now. She knew he was rehearsing. Theo was rehearsing what to say to a sister he had met exactly once, to a sister's husband he had never met, to 2 small girls who didn't know he was their uncle. He rehearsed and unrehearsed and rehearsed again. What if they don't like him? What if the older girl is shy? What if Cordelia changed her mind on the drive over to her own house this morning? What if? What if? What if he just drove past? Drove right past the house. Said he got lost. Said. Rosalind glanced at him. Theo. What? Stop. I'm not doing anything. You're doing it loud. He laughed. Once. A breath of one. He kept driving. Burlington was an hour out when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. He put it on speaker. Hello. Mr. Hartwell. A man's voice. Older. Tired, official. Speaking. This is Gregory Finch's office. I'm sorry to bother you on the holiday. A small drop in Theo's stomach. Lawyers didn't call on holidays for good reasons. Yes. Mr. Finch asked me to inform you that the FBI executed a search warrant on your cousin Vivian's residence yesterday morning at 6 a.m. The Securities and Exchange Commission has frozen her accounts. Mr. Reginald Hartwell was taken into federal custody at his Southampton home at the same time. They are both facing federal charges, wire fraud, tax evasion, and several environmental statutes I will not bore you with. Theo gripped the wheel. Okay. Mr. Finch wanted you to know before you read it in tomorrow's papers. Okay. He also wanted me to say, and I quote, your great-uncle was a difficult man, but he was not a stupid one. End quote. Theo closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. The road was still there. Tell Mr. Finch I appreciate the call. Yes, Mr. Hartwell. And yes. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. He hung up. He drove. Rosalind didn't ask. She had heard. After a long minute, he said, Cornelius. Yes. He really did it. He really did. He killed them. Legally. He killed them without leaving a fingerprint. He waited a long time to do it. He knew what they were. They're going to lose everything. They already lost everything. The papers will just announce it. Theo drove. He thought about Vivian in a holding cell. He thought about the cream-colored note. Enjoy the black mold and the tax bills, cousin. He thought he would feel something. He didn't feel much of anything. That was strange. He had carried a small, bright, mean little flame in his chest since he was 17 years old. The flame of being laughed at. The flame of being the wrong kind of Hartwell. The flame of every time Vivian had said the word idealist like it was a slur. He had expected the flame to flare up when he heard the news. Instead, it just went out. Like a match in a wet sink. He drove. Cordelia's house was on a quiet street in the south end of Burlington. A small white Cape Cod. A blue door. A wreath of dried wheat and red ribbon. The garden, even in November, still had a few dry stalks of black-eyed Susans clinging on by their fingernails. A station wagon in the driveway. A Subaru behind it, the same shade of green as Rosalind's, which made Theo laugh quietly to himself. Because it figured. Of course it figured. They were sisters and brothers across 40 miles of road in Subaru. He parked. He sat. Theo. Yes. Get out of the car. I am. Now, Theo. I am. He got out of the car. The blue door opened before he made it up the walk. The smaller girl came out first. Lily. 5 years old. Her hair was in a crooked braid. She was wearing a paper turkey on her head, made of brown construction paper, with red and yellow feathers stapled to the back. She came down the steps barefoot. Are you our uncle? She said it like a customs question. Theo stopped on the walk. Yes. Mommy said you have her eyes. I do. Show me. He squatted down. Lily walked up to him. She put her small hands on either side of his face. She turned his head left. She turned his head right. She looked. She nodded. Yep. What's your name? You know my name. What's your name? Lily. Lily. What's your name? Theo. That's a weird name. It is. I like it. Okay. Come inside, my mom made too much pie. She took his hand. His hand was twice the size of her hand. She pulled him up the front walk. Inside the house smelled like 100 good things. Turkey, sage, apples, butter, a wood fire. There was a record playing somewhere. Bing Crosby low. The older girl, Margaret, was in the front hall, hanging back a little, watching from the corner. Margaret had her grandmother's eyes. Theo looked at her and his chest did something. Hi, he said softly. Hi. You're Margaret. Yes. That was my mom's name. Mommy told me. Is that okay? She thought about it. Yes. That was it. That was her answer. Just yes. The yes of a child who had decided to give a stranger a chance and who would not change her mind. Cordelia came out of the kitchen. She was wearing a green sweater and an apron printed with small white pumpkins. Her hair was up. There was flour on her cheek. She looked at Theo. She looked at her daughters. She came forward. She hugged him. This one was a real hug. Not a hand on the shoulder. A real full two-armed sister and brother hug. Theo held her for a long second, and he felt his ribs unlock. When she pulled back, she had tears in her eyes. But she was laughing. You came. I came. You brought Rosalind. I brought everyone I love who would fit in a car. Cordelia laughed. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist. Come meet David. David Brooks Mills was a tall man with sandy hair and a careful smile. He shook Theo's hand the way men shake hands when they have been told a great deal about each other, but have never met. Theo. David. My wife has been making 3 pies a day for a week. It smells incredible. She's nervous. I'm nervous. Yeah. Well. David smiled. It was a real smile this time. The careful went out of it. Welcome to the family. The word hit Theo behind the knees. Helen was there too. Helen, the librarian's wife. Cordelia's other mother. She was wearing a soft gray sweater and pearl earrings, and she came over and hugged Theo without saying anything. She just hugged him. Then she held him at arm's length. She looked at his face the way a woman looks at a portrait. You look like her, she said. I know. I wish I had known her. She would have liked you. I think she would have liked that I raised her girl. She would have loved that. Helen blinked twice. Then she patted his cheek. Come eat. Dinner was at a long oak table that David had built himself from reclaimed barnwood. There were 10 people around it. Theo, Rosalind, Cordelia, David, the 2 girls, Helen and her husband, a tall, quiet man named Walter, who had taught high school history for 40 years before retiring last spring, and David's brother and his wife who had driven up from Boston. Theo sat between Margaret and Rosalind. Margaret leaned against his arm at one point the way a child leans when she is testing whether someone will stay. He stayed. He didn't move. He ate slowly and listened and let himself be exactly where he was. After dinner, the girls dragged him to the living room. They wanted to show him every drawing they had ever made, every stuffed animal they owned, every page of a hand-drawn book Margaret had been working on for 2 months, called The Adventures of Sir Pickle. Sir Pickle was a pickle. He had a sword. He fought villains made of mustard. Theo read every page. He said it was the best book he had ever read. Margaret rolled her eyes the way an 8-year-old rolls her eyes when she suspects flattery. But the smile underneath was real. Later, much later, when the girls were asleep, and David and his brother were doing dishes, and the women were on the couch with mugs of tea, Cordelia came and sat down on the rug next to Theo's chair. I have a question, she said. Okay. I've been holding it all night. Okay. Why did you do this? He looked at her. What? Find me. Come here. The whole thing. Why? He took a long breath. Because someone should have. That's not a reason. Because my mother carried you in her every day of her life and never got to say it out loud. Because Cornelius watched you grow up from a distance like a coward and never got to say it either. Because I have spent 15 years putting old houses back together. Because I couldn't put the people in my life back together. And you. You were the one I could. You were the one who was still here. You were the one who could still be reached. She didn't say anything. She put her head against his knee. He put his hand on her hair. They sat like that for a long time. He drove back to Connecticut the next day. The drive was different from the drive up. The drive up he had spent rehearsing. The drive back he spent quiet. Rosalind dozed in the passenger seat. The hydrangeas were gone, given to Cordelia. The shortbread tin was empty. The Subaru's tires hummed on the highway. Theo thought about the list. 22 names left. Marcus Okafor at the top. He thought about the vault. He thought about how much of it he was going to keep, and how much of it he was going to give away, and how he was going to do it. By the time he pulled into Blackthorne's driveway, he had a plan. In December, Theo drove to New Haven with a small locked case on the passenger seat. Inside the case was one rare gold coin. He had spent 2 days driving the auction houses of New York, picking the right one. He chose a discreet specialty firm in the Diamond District. Old building. Brass elevator. The kind of place where the appraiser wore a loop on a chain and didn't ask follow-up questions. The appraiser looked at the coin. He looked at Theo. He looked at the coin again. He took the loop off and set it down very gently on the felt mat. Sir. Yes. This is, sir. I know what it is. Where? It belonged to my great-uncle. It is mine now. I have provenance documentation for the original acquisition in 1973. Sir, may I? Yes. The appraiser examined it for a long time. He set down his loop. He named a number. It was a number with 7 figures. The first digit was a 7. Theo nodded once. Sell it. 48 hours later, $7,200,000 wired into a corporate trust account at a small, discreet bank in New Haven. Theo paid the tax lien in full the next morning. He paid the penalty interest. He took clear title to Blackthorne. He drove home and sat on the front porch with a cup of coffee and looked at his house. His house. His. Free and clear. Then he made phone calls. He called a roofing company in Hartford. They came out the next week. They put a new slate roof on Blackthorne over the course of 2 months. Theo supervised every cut, every flashing seam, every ridge tile. The slate matched the original Vermont quarry stock. He had it shipped down by rail the way it had been shipped in 1881. He called an electrical contractor. He called a plumber. He called a tree service to clear the dead oaks from the long drive. He hired carpenters. He hired masons. He hired a stonecutter to restore the front steps. He hired a woman named Janelle who specialized in restoring leaded glass windows and who would, over the next 8 months, repair every original window in the east wing. He paid them all well. He paid them ahead of schedule. He paid them what their work was worth. Word got around. In a small town, word always gets around. The bakery in Litchfield Crossing put up a sign in their window that said, "Welcome home, Blackthorne." The owner, a woman named Maeve, who had grown up 2 doors down from Rosalind, brought a loaf of sourdough every Friday and refused to take money for it. The hardware store extended Theo a line of credit. The library invited him to give a talk on Victorian restoration. He gave the talk. 30 people came. Some of them stayed after to ask questions. One of them, a young man named Ezra, who had just graduated from a trade program in New Haven, asked if Theo was hiring. Theo hired him. He was the first. He was not the last. In February, Theo drove to Detroit. Marcus Okafor lived in a small brick row house on the east side. The neighborhood was quiet, old. The trees were bare. The sidewalks were heaved by tree roots. Theo parked. He sat in his truck for 10 minutes. He had practiced this conversation 47 times. He did not feel ready. He got out anyway. He climbed the front steps. He knocked. A man opened the door. 55 years old, tall, a little stooped, gray at the temples. He was wearing a Detroit Lions sweatshirt and the kind of comfortable jeans a man wears when he is in his own house on his own day off. Yes, Mr. Okafor. Yes. My name is Theo Hartwell. The man's expression did not change for almost 3 full seconds. Then it did. His hand on the door tightened. Hartwell. Yes, sir. Hartwell like. Yes, sir, like that. A long, dangerous silence. My family doesn't take charity from Hartwells. I'm not here to give you charity. Then what? Theo took a breath. My great-uncle stole something from your family in 1987. He died in October. He left a list. Your family's name is on it. There are 23 names. You are the first. Stole. Yes, sir. My father had a heart attack. I know. 2 months after your great-uncle's lawyers came to our shop. I know. My mother lost the house. I know. Marcus Okafor stood in his doorway in his Lions sweatshirt and his comfortable jeans, and his eyes filled. You don't know, he said. You're right, I don't. I have read about it. I have read everything I can find. But I don't know. You're right. The man's hand on the door tightened more. What do you want, Hartwell? I want to give you back your bakery. A pause. What? I want to give you back your bakery. I have looked into the building. It is still standing on West Verner. It has been a check cashing place for 19 years. The current owner is willing to sell. I am prepared to buy it for you. I am prepared to buy the equipment. I am prepared to fund the first 2 years of operations. I have a letter from my great-uncle in my pocket. He wrote it to your family. He never sent it. I would like to give it to you if you will take it. You don't have to read it. You can burn it. But it is yours. He stopped. He could hear his own breathing. Marcus Okafor stared at him. A long time. A car drove by behind Theo on the street. A kid on a bicycle. A dog barked somewhere. Come in, Marcus said. Theo stepped inside. They sat at the kitchen table. Marcus made coffee. Theo handed him the letter and Marcus held it, without opening it for a long time. Then he opened it. He read it. He set it down. He cried, not loudly, not even visibly at first. Just two slow lines down a 55-year-old man's face. The way men cry when they have not been allowed to cry for 38 years. "My mother died last spring," he said. "I'm sorry. She always said the bakery was the only thing she had ever wanted. I'm sorry. She never said it to me. She said it to her sister. Her sister told me at the funeral. I'm so sorry. You're really gonna do this. I'm really going to do this. You don't know me. I don't have to." Marcus put his face in his hands. When he came back up, he said, "My daughter. She has a degree in business. She has been waiting tables in Royal Oak. She has been saving up. Tell her she's hired." Just like that. Just like that. "It's your bakery, Mr. Okafor. You decide who works there." Marcus laughed. It was a wet laugh. It was a real one. "Call me Marcus. Marcus. And son, you stay for dinner. My wife is going to want to meet you. She's not going to believe me." "Yes, sir." "Marcus." "Yes, Marcus." He stayed for dinner. Marcus's wife, a small woman named Yvette with quick hands and a quicker laugh, made greens and cornbread. The daughter came over from her apartment when her father called and told her to drop everything. The daughter, who was 26 and named Imani, sat across from Theo and asked him hard questions for an hour. He answered all of them. By the time the pie came out, she had stopped asking. He drove home the next day with the sense that he had begun something he could not stop. He didn't want to stop. In April, Theo went to Pittsburgh. A widow named Esther Klein. Cornelius had forced her husband out of a small machine shop in 1984. In May, Cleveland. A man named Bo Reynolds, whose father had owned a fishing fleet on Lake Erie, that Cornelius had bankrupted in a hostile takeover and broken up for parts. In June, Charleston, West Virginia. A family whose mining company had been gutted and whose health benefits had been stripped, and whose name had been on the very top of Cornelius's sealed environmental case. Each visit was different. Some doors slammed in his face. Some opened slowly. Some opened all the way. One man in a small town in Pennsylvania refused the money and asked Theo to leave. Theo left. He sent the man a letter a month later. He didn't expect an answer. The answer came in July. The man wrote back. The man wrote that he had thought about it. The man wrote that his wife had cancer, and that maybe if the offer still stood, he would like to talk again. The offer still stood. It always still stood. In July, federal indictments came down against Vivian and Reginald. Theo read about it in the Wall Street Journal. The article was long. The article used the word catastrophic. Vivian and Reginald, having moved the bearer bonds through 3 accounts in Zurich, had triggered every red flag in the international banking system. The bonds were authentic. The bonds were also the sole remaining equity in Hartwell Continental Holdings. The moment Vivian and Reginald registered themselves as the owners, they took on the full liability of the corporation. $50 million in unfunded pensions, $12 million in pending environmental fines, sealed federal investigations now unsealed. The kicker was simple. Because the bonds had been physically located at Blackthorne Manor, in a safe behind a wooden panel in the library at the time of Cornelius Hartwell's death. They had been part of the probate estate. By taking them without authorization, before the will had been executed, Vivian and Reginald had committed felony theft of estate property. By using them, they had committed fraud. By transferring them through Swiss accounts, they had committed wire fraud and money laundering. There was no defense. There was no settlement that did not involve liquidation. They lost everything. The penthouse was seized. The Hamptons estate went to auction. The Aspen property, the offshore accounts, the Hartwell Commercial Group itself. The article noted that Vivian and Reginald were currently free on bond awaiting sentencing. Theo read the article twice. He set the newspaper down on the kitchen table. He went outside. He stood in the rose garden which Rosalind had been replanting all spring with him. Late June. The first blooms were just opening. Pink and white and a deep burgundy red. Rosalind said had been Cornelius's mother's favorite color. He stood there and waited to feel something. He didn't. He felt the sun on his neck. He felt the breeze. He thought of Vivian somewhere in a small rented apartment, now calling her father, calling lawyers, calling people who used to take her calls. He thought of how easy it would be to not feel anything. He thought of how dangerous it would be to not feel anything. He went back inside. He started writing the letter. The letter was hard to write. He drafted it many times. He showed the 7th draft to Rosalind. She read it. She set it down. "This is the right letter," she said. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. You're not just being kind. I'm being honest. Kindness is what you have inside you. Honesty is the version of yourself you're sending to them. They are not always the same letter." He folded the letter into an envelope. He addressed it to a small apartment in Queens where Vivian was now staying with a friend who had not abandoned her. He mailed it. He didn't expect an answer. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, a battered sedan turned into the long drive at Blackthorne. Theo was on the south porch. He was repairing a window frame. He looked up at the sound of tires. He set down his chisel. The car came up the gravel slowly. It was a Hyundai, maybe 15 years old. Mud on the wheel wells, one headlight cracked. It stopped in the circle. 2 doors opened. Vivian got out of the driver's side. She was 33 now. She had stopped dyeing her hair. It was coming in gray at the temples. Her clothes were from a thrift store, Theo could tell, because the cardigan was the kind that had been popular 10 years ago. Her face was thinner. Her eyes were tired in a way they had never been tired before. Reginald got out of the passenger side. 59. He had lost 20 pounds. His Rolex was gone. His shoulders were not the shoulders of the man who had patted Theo's arm in a conference room about a year ago. They were the shoulders of a man who had been broken in a way that no money could repair. They stood at the bottom of the porch steps. Theo set down his tools. He came to the top of the steps. He didn't come down. For a long second, nobody said anything. Then Vivian said, "I got your letter." "Yes." "You didn't have to write it." "I wanted to." It said you didn't hate us." "I don't." "Why?" "Because hating you wouldn't get me anything I want." Reginald looked at his shoes. Vivian held a folded piece of paper in her hand. It was Theo's letter. The folds were soft. It had been opened and refolded a lot. She looked up at him. Theo, yes, I have nothing. I know. They took the apartment. They took the cars. They took my mother's pearls. I'm sorry. You're not. I am, actually. She looked at him. She looked at him a long time. She started to cry. It was not pretty. It was not theatrical. It was a dry, ugly, exhausted cry. The cry of a woman who had spent 33 years being a kind of person, and who had just learned that the person she had been was the person who had ruined her, and who didn't know what kind of person to be next. Reginald put a hand on her arm. Theo had never seen Reginald put a hand on anyone like that. He came down the steps. He stood in front of her on the gravel. Vivian. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Vivian. What? There is a vocational training program in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It is a good program. It is run by a woman who is a friend of Rosalind's. The program teaches restoration carpentry, furniture repair, plasterwork, things with your hands. I don't. I know. I have never. I know. My hands are. Your hands are fine. They are not used to it. They will get used to it. The first month is the worst. She looked at her hands. They were the hands of a woman who had spent her life in salons. Why are you offering me this? Because somebody offered it to your father before he was your father, and he turned them down, and he became Cornelius's lawyer instead. And he raised you in a way that taught you that working with your hands was beneath you. I think a different version of you would have liked the work. She didn't say anything. He pulled an envelope from his back pocket. Inside, this is the address. A check for the first 3 months of housing. A check for the first 3 months of food. A list of 2 people in town who will help you get on your feet if you ask. After that, you're on your own. You will not get another check from me. You will not get another offer. He held it out to her. This is not forgiveness. She looked at him. What is it? It is permission to start over. She took the envelope. Her hand was shaking. Reginald cleared his throat. What about me? Theo looked at him. For a moment, Theo wanted to say a thing he had been saving. If you need a loan to file for bankruptcy, you let me know. The words were right there. He had rehearsed them too. He had rehearsed them in the truck after the will reading about a year ago. He had carried them around like a knife in his coat pocket. He looked at his uncle. He looked at the man in the cheap jacket with the missing Rolex. He didn't say it. He said, "There's another envelope in my truck. There's a small program in Hartford for men over 50. They retrain accountants. There's a need. You were always good with numbers before you stopped using them for anything but stealing. Take the envelope. Do what you want with it." Reginald looked at him. He didn't cry the way Vivian cried. He just nodded once. It was a small nod. The nod of a man who had spent a lifetime learning to nod for the wrong reasons, and who had finally been given a reason to nod that was the right reason, and who didn't quite know what to do with it. "Thank you," he said. It came out a little broken. Theo nodded back. He watched them get in their Hyundai. He watched the car turn around in the gravel circle. He watched it drive down the long drive between the oaks Rosalind and his crew had cleared and trimmed. He watched it disappear around the bend. Rosalind came out onto the porch. She had been watching from the window. She came down the steps and stood next to him. "You didn't say it," she said. "What?" "You know what?" He laughed. Once. A short, surprised breath. "No, I didn't." "Why not?" He thought about it. "Because I'm not him." She put her hand on his arm. "No," she said. "You are not." The next Thanksgiving was at Blackthorne. The house was not finished. Houses like Blackthorne are never finished. But the foyer was done. The library was done. The kitchen was done. The grand dining room with its restored oak paneling and the long table that David Brooks Mills had helped Theo build out of reclaimed barnwood from a property down the road was done. 23 people sat at that table on the last Thursday in November. Cordelia and David and the girls. Helen and Walter Brooks. Rosalind, Ezra and 3 other young people Theo had hired, and was slowly turning into a small army of restoration carpenters, Marcus and Yvette Okafor, who had come from Detroit, and who had brought their daughter Imani, who was now running the bakery and whose bread was beginning to be talked about in food blogs. Esther Klein from Pittsburgh. The Reynolds family from Cleveland. 3 people from the list of 23. 3 so far. 20 to go. They called the work the Hartwell Foundation. It had a board that included Cordelia and Rosalind and Marcus. Its mission on paper was historic preservation. In practice, it was something else. It was a long, slow apology written in money and in time. It was a building project that had nothing to do with buildings. Rosalind stood up at the head of the table. The room got quiet. She held a glass of wine in one hand. The other hand rested on the back of Theo's chair. She looked around the table. She looked at the faces. She looked at the candles. The 2 extra ones Theo always lit now. One on each end of the table. One for his mother. One for the great uncle who had been a difficult man, and not a stupid one. She lifted her glass. "This," she said, "is not the treasure Cornelius left us." The room was very still. "This," she said, "is the treasure he spent his whole life looking for." She set her glass on the table. She sat down. Theo couldn't see her clearly for a moment. The candlelight had gone soft around the edges of his eyes. Margaret, sitting beside him, leaned against his arm. Lily, on his other side, was already eating a roll. Cordelia was looking at him across the table. She was smiling. Outside, the November wind moved through the bare oaks along the drive. The slate roof did not leak. The windows held. The fire in the grate burned clean. Below the floor, far below it, behind a panel of restored wainscoting, that no living person in that house except Theo and Rosalind knew was there. A vault hummed quietly in the dark. A car the color of midnight. A woman in a painting reading her letter. A list of names with 3 crossed off and 20 waiting. Theo Hartwell, 36 years old, looked around his dining room at the people his great-uncle had not been able to give him in life, and that his great-uncle had somehow, against every reasonable expectation, managed to give him in death. He raised his glass. "To Margaret," he said. "To Margaret," they answered. 2 candles burned on the long table. Outside, the snow began. It came down soft. It came down slow. It covered the gravel drive, and the rose garden Rosalind had brought back from the dead, and the slate roof Theo had laid by hand with 3 other men through a hard September. The house stood in the falling snow. The light from the dining room window fell out across the yard in a long, warm rectangle. Inside the rectangle, the laughter went on. That was the inheritance, not the gold, not the paintings, not the car. The room with the long table, the 2 candles, the names being crossed off the list one at a time for as many years as Theo had left to cross them off. In the upstairs window of the east wing, the light in Rosalind's bedroom went out around 11 o'clock. In the master bedroom, Theo sat for a long time on the edge of his bed. He looked at the photograph on the nightstand. His mother at 16, smiling at someone behind the camera. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. He turned off the lamp. He lay down. The snow came down outside the window. The house held.